Hello there, and welcome to Tailgates and Driveshafts. This is a podcast that is designed to help people research and look for their next truck and their next mod. I'm your host, Ian Tilley. On this episode, we'll be talking about the Toyota Tundra. This is one of my personal favorite trucks, and this is the truck that I currently own myself. Now, the history of the Tundra actually starts with the T100 model truck. Since Japan doesn't really have a truck market like we have in North America, they were wanting to be cautious about offering a full-size truck. Even though there were plenty of dealerships and plenty of customers who were clamoring and begging for a full-size truck, they were still cautious. So they made the T100. The T100 was used to help gauge the interest by sales for a bigger Toyota truck, because at the time all they had was the Toyota truck, or now the Toyota Tacoma. And they wanted to really see, okay, is it just noise, or will people actually buy a bigger Toyota truck? So the T100 was built. It was bigger than the Tacoma, but it still wasn't a full half ton, but it did well in sales, especially once they added an extended cab option and a bigger V6 to make it a little bit more powerful. The first gen Toyota Tundra was introduced as a 2000 year model truck, and it did have a couple more configurations available than the T100. It came available in a 3.4 liter V6 and a 4.7 liter V8. It came in extended cab, which at the time they called the access cab, and a crew cab, which they then called the double cab. If you got the double cab, you would get a 5.5 foot bed. If you got the access cab, you could get a 6.5 foot bed, or the 5.5 foot step side bed, which, on the older Fords and the GMs that had the step side beds, they kind of have their niche, their kind of cult following these days. But the Toyota Tundra stepside is very controversial. People either think it's super ugly or they think it's neat. Me, I'm kind of in the middle of, it looks kind of weird, but it's not just outright ugly in my opinion, but that's that. Now, one of the cool things about the Toyota Tundra crew cabs is that ever since this first gen, if you have a crew cab Tundra, every single one of them have a rear window that rolls down. I don't just mean a section of it like on most trucks. I mean the whole entire rear window rolls down. And it is a favorite feature among many Crew Max, or that's what they're called these days, the Crew Max Crew Cab Tundra owners. A lot of them will even, on a nice day, roll down their window, their back window, in front of other trucks just as a flex, if you will. I myself have an extended cab, so I don't get to do that kind of cool thing. With the first gen Tundra, the 4.7 liter V8 is a very good engine. But the really nice thing is that the engine bay is so spacious with that 4.7 V8. In my truck, I've got a 4.6 liter V8, and I'll kind of explain the difference later. But I've got a friend who had recently bought a 2008-ish model Tundra with a 4.7 in it. And we parked next to each other one day, and we opened up both of the hoods, and we're just kind of comparing and contrasting. And even though we have a similar size engine, it is astounding how much more space he's got in his engine bay than I do. I'm quite jealous, actually. I mean, with his engine, his truck, you can actually reach down, get to everything, change out the plugs, change out the coil packs. Whereas on mine, you'd kind of have to fish your hand around a couple components and go through some hoses and snake your hand through some things. Not his. Easy access on his. I'm a little bit jealous in that respect. There's not that much more to say about the first gens other than that they were successful in bringing about the true full-size Tundra. Because with that first gen, it still wasn't quite a full size. It didn't quite compare up to the same specs as the F-Series, the GM, and Dodge 1500s. With the second gen Tundra, which came out in 2008, this Tundra was a true full-size Tundra. I mean, it has that bulk. It looks like a truck. It has this brash front end. And that's what kind of drew me to Tundras in the first place, is it just looks like a truck. Because around 2008-ish is when the big three tried to make their trucks look a little bit more sleek and a little bit more aerodynamic and a little more like a car. And I don't really care for that. I like having a truck that looks like a truck, having that big, brash, bold front end. With the second gen Tundra, though, it brought out all sorts of changes and changed so many things for half-ton trucks. The extended cab, or rather the cabs in general on these second gen Tundras, are crazy spacious. The access cab, or rather I should say the extended cab, went from being called the access cab to the double cab, and the crew cab went from being called the double cab to the crew max. It gets confusing because if you're talking about Tacomas, the Tacoma still calls the extended cab access and the crew cab double cab. You gotta be careful if you're talking to someone in sales or someone else at all when trying to differentiate between the Tundra and the Tacoma cabs. If you say double cab, it could mean either extended cab or crew cab, depending on which truck. So gotta be careful there. Regardless, the extended cab Tundra is ridiculously spacious. I'm 6'2", long legs. With my seat almost all the way back, I can get in the back seat behind my driver's seat and still mostly have room. I mean, my knee is touching the back of the seat, but it's not digging into the seat. This is crazy because I remember getting into a friend's 2008 GMC Sierra crew cab. And in that crew cab, my knees were digging into the seat. So the fact that I've got an extended cab that has more space than an old crew cab is crazy. Which means that the crew max is just insanely big. And there's a reason why it's called the crew max, because it's just maximum space. At the time in 2008 when they released the crew max, there was no other standard size crew cab that could be comparable in size. The only other cab at the time that could be comparable in size was the Ram Mega Cab. It wasn't until about 2014 when the other big three kind of caught up to the crew max in size, or rather in terms of the size of their standard crew cabs. One of the other changes that was brought about by the second gen Tundra is that the 3UR FE 5.7 liter V8 engine was introduced alongside the returning 2UZ FE 4.7 engine. The cool thing is that what we'll find out in the next about 10 years after this is that there are two 4.7 Tundras that will make it to 1 million miles. This isn't just saying the chassis made it to 1 million miles. It's that the engines are original. The first one to make it to 1 million miles did have to replace the transmission. The second one managed to make it with original engine and original transmission. When the first truck hit 1 million miles, Toyota actually came and bought the truck back from the owner and gave him a brand new, I think it was a 2016 at the time, so a 2016 Toyota Tundra for taking his back. They took his back, did a full teardown to see, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? The neat thing about that teardown, which I will provide a link in the show notes for an article that goes over all their findings, but there are a couple cool things that they found. First of which was the engine. They took the engine out and put it on a dyno to test it. Now, by this point, they had stopped making the 4.7. They had to jerry-rig their dyno in order to put this 4.7 back on the test stand. What they found is that there's such minimal loss in power and efficiency that it would have actually passed the test to be put onto a new truck at the factory. When they tore down the engine, they looked at the bearings, looked at the oil, and there was such minimal metal shavings, such minimal wear and tear, that it didn't look like a 1,000,000-mile engine. It looked like it had half that many miles. The engineers were really impressed, and frankly, I'm impressed with how good the engine was even after that many miles. Which, the driver was a hotshot driver for the oil field in Louisiana. So it's not like he babied the truck or just drove it as a grocery getter. It was hauling stuff in the bed, hauling trailers. It was used as a work truck. When it came to the interior, they were surprised by how well the interior held up as well. The only issues that he really had was one of the visors wouldn't stay up or wouldn't stay down, something like that, and that the driver's seat had a little bit of tear in the cover. Other than that, everything was still in great condition. Now, this guy apparently was a bigger guy, like myself, and due to working as a hot truck driver, there were plenty of times that he would be sleeping in his truck, plus getting in and out constantly to load, unload, hook up a trailer, unhook a trailer. So there's a lot of getting in and out, a lot of weight on that seat, constantly up and down, lots of opportunities to wear and tear. Given that it was only the seat cover that had a tear and that tear didn't make it all the way down to the cushion, that's also pretty amazing for a 1,000,000-mile work truck. However, unfortunately, the 2UZ-FE 4.7 was discontinued around 2010 and was replaced by the 1UR-FE 4.6. As I mentioned earlier, this is the difference between the 4.7 and 4.6, or where that change happens. To my understanding, the most fundamental difference between the two is that the 4.6 and the 5.7 share the same lower end of the engine. The piston stroke is changed, the heads are different, and as far as I know, that should be most of the big main changes. I'm sure there's plenty of other smaller changes and whatnot, but those are the main differences between the 4.6, 4.7, and the 4.6, 4.7, 5.7. When it comes to that 3UR-FE 5.7, those are still great engines. You still see plenty of people talk about on the online forums and the Facebook groups that they are easily reaching 100,000 miles, 200,000 miles, 300,000 miles, and even 400,000 miles on these 5.7s. Probably the most common engine these days in the Tundra. They're all great engines too. The only issues that they really have is on the 4.7, the water pump is turned by the timing belt. If you develop a leak of your water pump and coolant gets onto the belt, it will quickly disintegrate that belt. Unfortunately, I found out this the hard way when my dad had a 2003 4Runner that had this 4.7 in it. And one day I was home sick and I get a text, "Hey, you working today?" "No, sir, I'm sick. What's up?" "Can you start looking for a new vehicle for me?" I'm like, "Oh, Dad, what's going on? You okay?" "So yeah, I'm fine. No accident. It's just that my engine blew up." I'm like, no. Because, having that 4.7, that V8 in a smaller package like the 4Runner made for a very fun vehicle. And I'm so sad that it is dead. That being said, if you have the 4.7 in your truck or you're getting a truck with a 4.7, watch out for the water pump and any leaking coolant. On the 5.7 and the 4.6, water pumps are still kind of an issue, but they don't affect the timing belt like it does on the 4.7. On the 5.7, you do have to worry about the cam tower leak and the secondary air injection pump. With the cam tower leak, that's just a common issue. You'll have to replace the gaskets, probably have to have a mechanic do it unless you are very mechanically inclined. On the secondary air injection pumps, again, might have to have a shop do it, or you have the options of choosing to have it tuned out or getting a custom tune which I know DAP tuning will be able to cancel out that injection pump, that way get rid of the check engine light, or to make it a little bit cheaper, there are aftermarket kits to help replace those and make it a little bit easier on the wallet. The second gen Tundra was also one of the first half tons in the market that could officially tow 10,000 pounds. That being said, I have talked to some of my coworkers or some friends too that had used a Tundra and tried to max it out at the 10,000 pound limit fairly often, and they said it just does not last. Yes, you can pull up to that much, but you have to either really modify the truck with, weight distribution, hitch, airbags, etc., in order to make it last long. Otherwise, it just can't keep up. You got to go to a 3/4 ton or 1 ton. There are also a lot of people who've been talking about these second gen trucks with the safety. When it comes to the safety of these trucks, it is phenomenal. There are quite a few people who I had found when I was researching to get a Tundra years ago that a lot of people had said, I am alive today by the grace of God and Toyota engineers. They shared pictures of their wrecks, and sure enough, you are wondering how they lived. Yet, they all claimed that when they got out from the wreck, they had scratches, some bruises, maybe some sprains, but otherwise they were fine. It's almost rare whenever I see a post about someone getting into a wreck with their Tundra and they actually suffer broken bones. There are also tow truck drivers on these groups and forums who will say that as they go to accident scenes, most of the time, if they see a Toyota vehicle at all, they can be pretty much assured that whoever was in there was going to live. They rarely ever see a fatality that includes a Toyota. Case in point, there's a video out there of someone who had stolen a Toyota Tacoma, were racing it down a highway, hit a ditch, went flying, landed on top of a Toyota Corolla, which is a smaller sedan. There's a lady inside the Corolla, and she lived. And I don't just mean lived a few hours and then passed away in the hospital. I mean, she lived and was fine after that. It is crazy how safe these Toyota vehicles can be. With that second gen, it got a minor facelift in about 2010. We saw an updated grille. The taillights became a little bit more square in the back end instead of being completely rounded. Then a new trim level was added, which is the Platinum, which was meant to be a more luxurious trim level to compete with some of the other luxurious trims at the time. One trend we've seen in America with the half-ton truck segments, and I mean the whole truck segment in general, is that they are becoming a more and more common vehicle used as a family vehicle, used as a daily driver, not just as a work vehicle, which means they're getting nicer, they're becoming more luxurious, they're getting more options, more features. These days, if you go get the highest trim level of any of the trucks, you might as well be sitting in almost like a Cadillac or Mercedes or some of these other luxury brand vehicles. I think I've mentioned before in the first episode that I have a friend who had asked me for help on finding a new truck to get to pull a travel trailer. And he said, I'm coming from an Audi. I want to get a truck that, I know it's going to have a rougher ride, but I still want to get a truck that has a ride close to an Audi. So I suggested he get the Ford F-150 with a 3.5 EcoBoost Tow-Max package. He got it, loves it, says that, yeah, this ride quality is great for a truck. Even then, I noticed when I test drove the 2014 Tundra when it was first coming out at a car show, that the 2014 F-150s ride really, really well. And driving them is almost like driving a car. It is crazy how easy it is to drive those trucks. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your preferences, the Tundra is not like that. The second gen Tundras are very much a truck, When you're driving it, it handles like a truck. It feels like a truck. Personally, I like that trucky feel. I like knowing I'm in a big truck versus feeling like I'm in an oversized car. Until you take a road trip and then all of a sudden like, I could do for nicer suspension and nicer seats. In 2014, there was a major facelift. It saw a whole new front clip, whole new bed, whole new interior. The only thing that came over from the original second gen 2008 is the whole chassis, undercarriage, drivetrain, powertrain, but everything, and also the cab frame. So the cab itself, the doors, those are all the same, but everything inside completely different. They had a new dash, a new center stack, new seats, new everything. On one hand, it was a nice update because it kind of kept the gauge cluster, kept the design more modern. It introduced a touch screen center stack instead of just being mostly analog and buttons like the 2008s were. Backup cameras became standard across all the trim levels, not just the nicer ones, but on even the most basic Tundra you can get. It is considered a safety standard feature, which I think is really cool. Because I'm the type that I have horrible depth perception, and yet here I am driving a Tundra. But when I go to like Walmart and I'm backing up into a space, there's not one of those concrete dividers or median to keep me from hitting the car behind me, half the time I pull in, I think, oh no, I'm about to hit the car behind me. And I get out and there's like 6 feet of space in between my back bumper and then the car. So it's really nice having that backup camera so I can back up and see just how close I am and be able to park right the first time. However, there's a couple things that were bad about this update. If you talk to some of the owners of the first 2008 Tundras and they went to 2014, they will often say that they feel like they lost some of the storage space, that there aren't as many storage compartments, and what compartments they still have aren't quite as big, and they do miss that from the earlier second gen. However, the nice thing is on all the second gen Tundras, the center console is, if you have the console shifter, not the column shifter, that the center console is extremely spacious. You can stick like a 15-inch laptop inside of it. Really nice, really big. The console safes are very popular, especially for those who are gun owners and they want to have a secure, well, as secure as can be method to stow your gun if you walk into a place where they're not allowed. They're plenty big to be able to put in that console vault, whatever you want to call it, console safe, stick your gun in there, be able to have some peace of mind that no one can just break the window and easily get into it. The 2014 also saw an update in the trims. The 2014 introduced the 1794 trim level. For some Toyota History 101, the Toyotas were initially built at, or rather the Tundras were initially built at the Princeton, Indiana factory. Come 2008, they were transferred to the San Antonio, Texas plant TMMTX. That plant sits on old ranch land. 1794 is the year that ranch was initially bought and started, that the factory now sits on. So the 1794 is not some arbitrary year. It is Toyota paying respect and an homage to that ranch that the factory now sits on. The 1794 also pays respects to its Texas origins with having a very Western themed interior. It's almost like the Toyota equivalent to a Ford King Ranch. You get inside, the interior is mostly brown, has that kind of saddle leather, Western boot leather kind of color scheme, gives you that kind of feel that when you get in, it's a Western truck. The fun part is with this 2014 refresh, update, whatever you want to call it, it caused a lot of controversy with what to call this generation. Is it still the second gen, or is it the third gen? So for years, a lot of people on the forums and on Facebook got into fights of, okay, is it third gen or gen 2.5? It wasn't until they had revealed the 2022 Tundra, the first full-on redesign in 14 years, that Mike Swears, the chief engineer for all of Toyota trucks, said 2022 is the third gen Tundra, which then means that we have to say that 2014 is basically like 2.5. In 2018, we have like 2.6, where they introduce a new gauge cluster and the TSS safety system, which TSS stands for Toyota Safety Sense. It has things like the lane departure, the collision assist, and I forget what else. However, do not confuse the TSS safety system for the TSS trim, or rather appearance package, that is offered by Gulf States Toyota dealers. In that case, the appearance package, TSS, stands for Toyota Sport Series. The Tundra I have is a 2017 Toyota Tundra SR5 trim level with a 4.6 liter V8 engine, and it has the TSS Off-Road appearance package. I find this funny because my truck is only a two-wheel drive, but it has this quote-unquote off-road package, which basically means at the time in 2017, it came with BFG KO2 tires, all-terrain floor mats, special badging, special bed stickers, and I think that was about it. I mean, there's not too much that goes into this appearance package. Then in 2020-ish, they got rid of that antenna that was on the passenger side front quarter panel and went to the shark fin style instead, added a couple more features like being able to remote start the truck through the app, and I think a couple other special features. A word of warning to people who want to get a remote start with their Toyota Tundra. Do not get the factory remote start. For some weird reason, or other, in their claims, they say it's for safety, but when you use the factory remote start, when you open the door to get in, it shuts the engine off. I installed a remote start from a company called Tech 12 Volts. They are the Tundra experts for audio and a lot of other things. The owner's name is James Taylor. He is an awesome guy, stand-up guy. I highly recommend going through him to get a remote start kit for your truck. And even then, one thing he does too is he adds an extra module as an option, so that not only can you use just your key fob to remote start it, but you can actually go into your phone with an app and remote start your truck from anywhere in the world. We were at Disney in February, sitting in the sun, 80 degrees, beautiful weather, when Texas was frozen under like 2 inches of snow, which I'm sure everyone from the north is thinking, that's not anything, that's barely anything at all, that's not frozen. Listen, for us in Texas, that's frozen, everything stops. Anyway, since we were gone for several days, I wanted to start the truck up that way whenever we did get back, it wouldn't have a dead battery since cold kills the batteries. As I was sitting there, I had lunch one day, sitting in the beautiful Florida sun. I got my phone out, hit start, and it ran for like 10 minutes, made sure the batteries are all charged up, and it was great. Also, being in Texas, it gets hot in summer. I have the ceramic tint installed on my truck, which I highly recommend if for anyone that lives in Texas or a hot state. If I go to Walmart or I'm at work, when I'm about 10 minutes away from getting into my truck, I get my phone out, I hit remote start. By the time I get into my truck, about 15 minutes later, it is comfortable inside the cab. I love having a remote start. So, long story short, if you have the factory Toyota remote start, I feel sorry for you, rip it out, get aftermarket. If you're looking for a truck, don't get one that has factory, or get it and then rip it out. Also in 2016, going back a step, Any truck built with a 5.7 also got a bigger 38-gallon tank. With the Tundras, as much as I love them, one of the trade-offs is that the fuel efficiency is horrible compared to the big three trucks. While the big three have AFM or the EcoBoost or whatever other things they have to get the better fuel mileage, the Tundra just has a basic 5.7, basic 4.6. Its only fuel saving issues or fuel saving components is like the variable valve timing. That's about it. I am getting like 14.6 average with my 4.6. All I've done to the truck is I have 33-inch all-terrain tires and then Bilstein 5100s all the way around, so I get like a 2-inch level. And that's it. And I'm getting 14.6. You get to the Fords and the Chevys and they're getting like 16 or 17 with that same setup. Having that bigger tank really does hurt at the pump whenever you have to fill it up all the way, but it's so nice having to get gas every like 3, 4, 5 days and go almost 2 weeks without having to get more gas. And I forgot one thing, going back to doing the 2014 refresh or facelift, is if you're like me where you have a spouse that is a different temperature setting than you. So I'm hot natured, she's cold natured. If we're in the truck, typically either I'm sweating or she's freezing. And it's hard to find a balance where we're both comfortable. I miss having dual zone AC. I had it in my first car, I had it in my first truck. I wish I still had it in the Tundra. In 2008 through 2013, you could get dual zone AC in that SR5 trim level. SR5 is one of the more basic, if not the most basic trim level. From 2014 to 2021, I think even now with the 3rd gen 2022 and newer, in order to get dual zone AC, you have to have a limited trim or higher. 2014 also, I think, or 2016, saw the TRD Pro was introduced, which is basically kind of an out-of-the-box solution for drivers who wanted something that could handle some off-road. That being said, if you're serious about off-roading, really truly serious about like overlanding, rock crawling, that kind of thing, everyone suggests don't get a TRD Pro, go get an SR5, go get a Limited, Platinum, 1794, whatever fits your fancy for the options and features, and just build it. Don't go with the stuff that Toyota put on there. The extra money isn't worth it. For the money you do spend, you can get a lot more bang for your buck going aftermarket. The crazy thing about the 2nd gen Tundra, even though we did see some updates throughout the latter half of its life, it was used for 14 years, which that does lend to its reliability. However, in that same time, all the big three had at least 2 or 3 new full-on generations introduced in that same time frame. Meaning that they had all these advancements and features and options, whereas Toyota would just have the same thing, still, a little bit of an update, but still the same truck. Finally come to the 3rd gen Tundra, which marked a radical departure from all the 14 years of the 2nd gen. At this point, they had ditched the V8s. No more 4.6, no more of the beloved 5.7. The only option available at launch is the V35A FTS twin turbo V6, and then so this podcast is being recorded in early 2022. I think it's either by fall or by spring 2023 they will be releasing a twin turbo V6 with a hybrid option attached. That is it. No V8s whatsoever. This has made a lot of Toyota customers mad because there's a lot of us who love that V8. There's a lot of us who believe in that there's no replacement for displacement. When it comes to these twin turbo V6s, at first when Ford had announced their EcoBoost, I was skeptical. I'm like, ha, how is this V6 supposed to move a half-ton truck? Then I saw the numbers, and I started hearing from people, real life stories about their trucks. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of legitimate. Now, I will say, I know there are plenty of issues with the EcoBoost, the cam phasers, whatever else. Still, this is a way that the whole entire truck segment is turning, is to the V6s, twin turbo V6s. I wish we could still keep the V8s because I love that V8 rumble. I have a straight pipe exhaust on my Tundra, and I love hearing that V8, especially on the highway when I'm going full throttle, going from 20 to 75, 80, whatever. But unfortunately, this is the way the world is going with truck engines. At this time, the new Tundra, again, it's been very controversial, not only in the engine, but also in its appearance. A lot of people are saying it looks too weird, doesn't look truck enough. It's too much of a departure from the older Tundras. Oh well. This is where we are. At the time, so far, Toyota has been dealing with issues on the turbo wastegates and some electrical issues on these new third gens. Of course, this is the first year of a whole new redesign, so of course you can only expect there to be some issues, some flaws to be worked out. Hopefully they will fix these as time goes on. I have talked to some friends of mine who own shops, and they are in agreement that pretty much from 2022 forward, we can't really expect to have any trucks that are going to be as reliable as the older V8 engine trucks. The Toyota Tundras from the entire time they existed until now. The old 93 to 2007 GM trucks. And Ford, pretty much from, at least in my opinion, early 90s, skip the one with the 5.4 Triton, and then 07 till recently when the 5.0 has been having issues with oil consumption. And that is that for the Toyota Tundra. This is an overview that is hopefully going to help you make some decisions on if your next truck is going to be a Tundra or go after another truck or another year model. The really basic thing to know about the Tundra is, like I've said before in my first episode, there's no such thing as the perfect truck. You've got ones that are going to be better at reliability, others that are better at having features, others at towing. No such thing as the perfect truck, only what is perfect for you. This truck will be perfect for those who want something reliable. They don't care about having all the nicest features. They don't care about having all the latest and greatest technology. They just want something that is going to be reliable, that will turn on every time you turn the key on, and will last you easily 200,000 miles if you take care of it. And really, if you do take care of it properly, it will probably last you more like 300,000 miles. I can't really think of anything else. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, shoot a message on Facebook, ask a question in the Facebook group. I will have all the links in the show notes for the groups and everything else. With that, have a great day.